Same hotel? Same price? No! There's a bunch of different prices out there all over the internet. Trivago instantly compares them to find your ideal hotel for the best price. Hotel Trivago.
There is a video circulating around the internet showing Donald Trump shoving a NATO leader. Okay, so this NATO leader is actually Prime Minister Milo Dukanovic of Montenegro, and it's amazing because it's indicative of who Donald Trump is as a person, and it shows you what he really thinks of himself. Take a look. No, it's the jacket. It's the jacket. I mean, hate that. Like the shove is one thing, but the jacket. Like,
no, it's like he did. I got a lot of crap for it because he's like I said it during the campaign. He's like a gorilla, right? And the sort of the big man who's like always, no, I'm in charge, and then he pounds his fist. But for Trump, it's always like, no, I'm here, I'm in front, I'm the guy, I'm the lead. I mean, he is a base animal at our worst. It's the worst. It's the worst of humanity exemplified right
It really is. And how do you respond to that? Because everybody maintains some semblance of professionalism around him.
Right.
Yes. I kind of want people to be like, yo. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't push me.
Yeah.
Check some of the ridiculousness. Like, meet him at his ridiculousness.
What's the Montenegrin leader's name?
Milo Dukanovic. Look, I totally agree with you because I always put myself in those situations and try to think about how I would react, and I know that I would struggle to react as calmly as the Prime Minister did. I mean, look at him. He gave him a pat on the back afterwards, and that's so incredible, and it's so classy and professional, and I give him a lot of credit for it. But yeah, I mean, in any other context, can you imagine someone doing that and people being okay with it?
Sure.
Can you imagine me coming on this stage in the studio and just being like, oh, Ben's in the middle. Fuck that. I want to be in the middle.
Right. Yeah, fix your jacket. Yeah.
Unacceptable.
Yeah. I don't buy the when, they go low, we go high. When they go low.
Sorry,
I go lower.
I knocked your mic off. Anyway, I think we're running out of time. We gotta go. We gotta take a break.
I'll sign off. That's it.
All right, guys.
Young Turks, see ya.
Our reporter Jordan Charrington broke the Donna Brazil story. He was right. She just apologized for it. Help us get more reporters like that. You're the one responsible for that. Thank you. And let's do more right now at tytnetwork.com/go.
Even when you're a star, nobody knows you like your kids.
What makes Dad roll his eyes?
You call kids.
Mommy, come on, right.
And they're the ones you can count on.
What was the last thing I thought to yesterday?
To always rat you out.
What does Dad like better about his looks?
Bernie Sanders was questioning White House budget chief Nick Mulvaney in regard to Donald Trump's budget proposal. Now, for anyone who's been paying attention, you know that the budget proposal would cut funding for a lot of programs that underprivileged Americans rely on, while giving the wealthiest Americans more tax cuts. Now, of course, this is something that Bernie Sanders is not too pleased about, which is why he took the opportunity to ask Budget Chief Nick Mulvaney some pretty difficult questions that Mulvaney kind of stumbled with. So let's take a look at the first video where Sanders specifically talks about these tax cuts for the wealthy.
Mr. Mulvaney, as you know, the United States today has more income and wealth inequality than any major country on earth. Top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%.
52% of all new income today is going to the top 1%. But your budget thinks that it is good public policy to provide $52 billion in tax breaks to the wealthiest family in this country, a family already worth $128 billion. So my question is pretty simple. And I want you to tell the American people why you think it is a good idea to give $3 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1% at a time when the rich are becoming much richer, while at the same time you're going to throw 17 million children in this country off of health insurance because of the unconscionable cuts that you are making to Medicaid? Why are you going to throw seniors in the state of Wyoming or the state of Vermont off the Meals on Wheels program, maybe the one nutritious program that they get a day? Why are you going to throw women and low-income babies off of the WIC program at a time when infant mortality rates in this country was already high? Do you really think it is a great idea to tell a low-income pregnant woman that you're going to take away the WIC program, take away nutrition programs from children in order to give a massive tax break of $52 billion to the Walton family? Please explain your logic to the American people.
Damn. Just so fiery. It's so good. I want to know what Mulvaney was writing.
He's like,
FML, FML,
please
FML.
get me out of here. I am extremely uncomfortable with this man yelling at me right now.
Yeah,
like,
what
it
are
was
the
so
notes?
good. I know. Pretending like you're writing notes. And by the way, I'm being a little unfair because maybe he is writing notes. Like, oh wait, look into the fact that this would give $52 billion in tax breaks to the Walton family. Is that really true?
He's aware.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was an incredible line of questioning from Bernie Sanders. That is the type of, I don't want to say performance, because it's not really a performance, but that's the type of behavior by Bernie Sanders that I think made a lot of people want him to be the Democratic nominee. You know, why so many young people wanted to support him and wanted to see him win the election. And he's a fighter, and it's amazing. So, look, that's just the beginning of it, okay? Obviously, we didn't even give you guys a chance to check how Mulvaney responded. So let's go to the next video where you will see how he responds and judge for yourself whether or not you believe anything he says.
WIC serves all the projected participants. There's no change there. Meals on Wheels is not reduced at all. The change that we make is through the
CBDG program, which you eliminate.
The block grant thing.
So you eliminate the block grant. You tell me that funds the program. You tell me that doesn't have an impact on the program.
Is funded, Senator, through the old age or senior nutrition program, I think through HHS, which we don't change.
No, that's not true.
No, it is true, actually. The CDBG program is a block grant to the states, and some states do choose to use some of that.
You eliminate that program.
And that total.
The bottom line is,
Senator, I mean, if you
go ahead, answer the question.
The total money for Meals on Wheels that comes from CDBG is 3%. That's it.
Yeah,
and I don't know how you can possibly contend that we're.
But you are eliminating the program that funds not only Meals on Wheels, but many other programs at the discretion of governors and banks.
I would be more than happy to have a long discussion about CDBGs. You asked about Medicaid as well. The slashing of Medicaid, the dramatic cuts to Medicaid, is a slower growth rate of Medicaid. Medicaid spending goes up every
year. Yeah, but so does healthcare inflation. We go through these games every single year. Inflation is going up a lot faster than the money that you're putting in.
What I love is how prepared he is to respond to the games that politicians play in general, right? Because you can skew the argument and kind of twist the argument in a way that makes it seem like, no, it's no big deal. We're not really cutting that much from these programs that help the poor. But, you know, Bernie came in prepared, knowing what he's talking about, and that's important. That's important. So
I'm going to disagree a little bit. I obviously I love the passion from Bernie, and I love the intent. I think that politically he gave Mulvaney, who is a loathsome, unctuous, repulsive liar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be too strong, but he's a horrible, horrible guy. Politically, he may well love his children. But by being specific on things like Meals on Wheels, he allows Mulvaney to get into the minutia of Meals on Wheels and gives him arguably a rhetorical win on, hey, we're cutting 3% from Meals on Wheels. How can you argue that this is, and on the Medicaid thing where he's like, hey, it's just increasing at a slower rate. Then Bernie, to me, ends up being defensive as opposed to, again, an overall no shift in tone, no shift in anger when income inequality is getting worse and worse, when 1/10 of 1% own as much as 90% of everybody else. What kind of monsters end up giving $52 billion to the Walton families and $3 trillion to the richest Americans in the country? Who, obviously, why isn't that money being directed to the poorest Americans, to middle-class Americans, to programs that work, rather than allowing him to specifically retort certain points, which, again, Mulvaney's the director of the Office of Management and Budget. He's going to have, he's not going to be unprepared completely to defend his points.
Right. I mean, he's not unprepared because he has his talking points prepared,
right.
and he, tried to utilize them in that argument. But look, right now what we're doing is a play-by-play, and I think if you do a play-by-play, there are moments where Bernie comes off as stronger, and there are moments where Mulvaney comes out a little stronger, but not, in my opinion, not really. I think the saddest part about all of this is I think the vast majority of Americans are never even going to see this exchange.
Right.
They're not going to even be aware of Mulvaney's arguments and his, persistent lies on these issues, which is the worst part about all of this. But I want to give you a chance to jump in.
No, I think to your point, I think, when you talk about inequality, I think to Bernie's credit is that you have to put a face on what inequality looks like. So when you mention WIC, when you mention Meals on Wheels, granted, if voters ever see this, it lets them know how they'll personally be impacted. Because sometimes when you speak too generally, people tend to conflate other folks with inequality as opposed to themselves. You get Meals on Wheels, right? You're affected by Medicaid and Medicare, and it's not just those other people. So I think it is a delicate dance that you have to do when you talk about inequality, is also personalize it for folks who think that that's them.
That's actually a really good point, because just today CNN ran a fascinating story about an elderly woman who voted for Trump, and based on his budget proposal, if it goes through, her SSI benefits would just be gone, and that's what she relies on to live. And so she was interviewed by CNN, and she was like, I didn't expect him to go after, my safety net. I didn't expect him to go after a program that helps me. And so I know it's frustrating, right? Because this is the kind of stuff, working in the news side of things, this is the kind of stuff that we've been reporting on over and over again and trying to get it through everyone's heads that these people are not looking out for you. But regardless, I think it is important to mention the specific programs that are going to experience cuts. I think it is important to personalize it, because we're like living in this weird society where it's us versus them with everything. And it can't be that way. All of us are going to be impacted in some negative fashion if we allow this type of budget proposal to go through. There is one last video that I want to toss to. This is where Sanders is demanding a Mulvaney answer to why the richest people in this country get a tax break, whereas the poorest people will be hurt the most. Take a look.
Bottom line is, tell me, let me get back to one question. Sure. Why do you think the Walton family needs a $52 billion tax break?
My guess is that you're basing that assertion on the only tax detail that we have in the budget.
The repeal of the estate tax. Exactly.
Right. And if we want to have a talk about why we're repealing that, I'd be more than happy to do
Good,
that.
let's tell me.
Because ordinary people are paying more.
No, ordinary people do not have a wealth of $128 billion.
The average,
that's not an ordinary person.
The average increase across this nation.
You're not answering the question. The question is, answer the question. The wealthiest family in America gets a $52 billion tax break as a result of the repeal of the estate tax.
That's correct.
Tell the American people why you think that's good when you cut Medicaid and you cut programs for kids.
Again, we don't cut Medicaid. We're talking about repealing Obamacare. The results
are 23 million people off of health insurance. That's right.
Which is a CBO number that I think you just agreed could be wrong.
I didn't agree to that at all.
Okay. That we repeal Obamacare.
Why does a billionaire family get a $52 billion tax break? Please tell the American people.
Because we think it's wrong that real ordinary folks lose coverage. And we want to get rid of
ordinary people. Is the Walton family an ordinary family?
No, they're not. They're extraordinary. But ordinary people are losing coverage today under Obamacare.
I asked you why the wealthiest family in America is getting a $52 billion tax
And I'm answering the question by saying because we repeal Obamacare.
No, and the estate tax, which applies to the top 0.2%.
Senator, okay, if that I'm sorry. I thought the assumption was we were looking at the tax reductions that are contained in Obamacare.
No, that's not what we're talking about. No.
Okay.
We're talking about the repeal of the estate tax, which you just mentioned.
The budget assumes a deficit-neutral tax plan because when we wrote the budget, we did not have nearly enough specifics to assume what you're assuming, which is the specific reductions. Yes, the proposals that the White House published about 3 or 4 weeks ago, the principles that we set forth does include a reduction of the estate tax.
Repeal of the estate tax, sir.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a repeal of the estate tax, but I think it's mathematically impossible to take those general principles and assume a direct impact on a particular family. Nobody can do it. I've seen estimates from groups that say, "Oh, it's going to add deficit by $2 trillion to $10 trillion." People,
that's really not true.
Well, that one I give to Bernie. But again, that was specific. He gave him. There were fewer ways. He had the other one gave him too many outs.
Yeah.
But that's and I don't want to seem nitpicky, but that's an issue I think that Bernie has is that you give him enough, you fire at enough things, and then you just respond to one. But there, I mean, he's like, "Oh, you're talking about the estate tax." Like, yeah, I said the estate tax 12 times. Everybody knows we're talking about the estate tax. And of course, as we know, there is no argument for the estate tax that affects regular Americans because even now, and what Democrats would ultimately agree to are exemptions that I think now are in the neighborhood of, I don't have it in front of me, but it's like $3 million per person or $6 million. So unless your estate, you're like tax free through $5 or $6 million of the estate. So family farms, that makes them exempt. We're not talking about, you got to have, before you get an ounce of estate tax, you got to be inheriting more than like $7 million.
Yeah.
So we're not, or in some cases it might be a little bit lower, but I mean, millions and millions of dollars come to you tax free. If your parents die in their house and it's worth $726,000, you're not taxed on it.
You're not taxed on it. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. I love that exchange. I love how strong Bernie is. I love that he continues to fight, even though he's not campaigning for anything right now. That's what we need. We need politicians that are actually looking out for those who are powerless, who don't have anyone, voicing their concerns.
Our reporter Jordan Charrington broke the Donna Brazil story. He was right. She just apologized for it. Help us get more reporters like that. You're the one responsible for that. Thank you. And let's do more right now at tytnetwork.com/go.
A congressional candidate in Montana has now been charged with misdemeanor assault after he got physical with a reporter from The Guardian. Now, this is Greg Gianforte, who is running in the special election in Montana. And apparently, during a campaign event, he was approached by Ben Jacobs, who is a reporter at The Guardian, who simply wanted to ask a few questions about the Congressional Budget Office's analysis of the Affordable Care Act's replacement.
Asking for the score, and Gianforte had said for some time, because he was trying to avoid it, obviously, we all know that, I'll wait to give you my reaction to the Trump healthcare bill,
right?
Until I get the CBO score. And here we are on the day before the election. I have the CBO score, so Ben Jacobs thought, okay, we have the score, now we need your reaction.
So Ben Jacobs does what a journalist is supposed to do. He goes up to this congressional candidate, for this special election in Montana and asks him, all right, now that we know this analysis, now that we know how much this is going to cost, and now that we know that 23 million Americans are expected to be uninsured under, Trump's Affordable Care Act replacement, what do you think? And Gianforte didn't want to answer the question. So he was approached by The Guardian's Ben Jacobs, who put a voice recorder to Gianforte's face and began asking if he had a response to the newly released Congressional Budget Office report on the American Health Care Act, the Republican replacement for the Affordable Care Act. Now, this is reporting by Alicia Acuna, who is from Fox News. She was there compiling data for Brett Baer's show, right?
There's a whole Fox News crew there about to do a piece. That's why the candidate was in one place and could be approached.
Right. That's exactly right.
took advantage of that situation again.
The way that a
Before the
journalist is
election,
supposed
sure.
to, right? So I'm giving you that context before I play the video, not the video, the audio of what happened. I will explain to you what happened physically based on the account of the Fox News staff that was there and witnessed it. But before that, let's take a listen, and we'll come right back.
We'll talk to you about that later.
Yeah, but there's not going to be time. I'm just curious.
Okay, speak with Shane, please.
But you got
The last guy that came here, you did the same thing. Get the hell out of here. Get the hell out of here. The last guy did the same thing. You were the guardian? Yes, and you just broke my glasses. The last guy did the same damn thing.
You just body slammed me and broke my glasses.
Get the hell out of here.
If you'd like me to get the hot up here, I'd also like to call the police. Can I get you guys' names?
Hey, you gotta leave.
He just body slammed me.
You gotta leave.
Okay, so let me fill in the blanks for you. Alicia Acuna, again, from Fox News, wrote about this, and here's what she had to say. Gianforte told him he would get back to him later. Jacobs persisted with his question. Gianforte told him to talk to his press guy, Shane Scanlon. At that point, Gianforte grabbed Jacobs by the neck with both hands and slammed him into the ground behind him. Acuna and her crew watched in disbelief as Gianforte then began punching the reporter. As Gianforte moved on top of Jacobs, he began yelling something to the effect of, "I'm sick and tired of this." So again, here are people from Fox News who witnessed what happened, and they are essentially reinforcing Jacob's account of what occurred. And it's just straight up assault. It's assault, and as a result, he has been charged with misdemeanor assault. But there's some drama regarding that charge as well. I'll get to that in a second.
You know, it's funny. You just took us through an explanation of what happened, and it's the world we live in. I would have done the exact same thing. But it's like we have to say, look, the Fox News person even said it was true.
Right.
The fact is, there's no reason to dispute. The audio says it's true. He said, Gianforte said, talk to my press guy, Shane Scanlon. There was an indistinguishable amount of time between finishing the name Scanlon and the beginning of violence.
Right.
So he went, talked to my guy, Shane Scanlon, and just grabbed him and choked him. Many conservatives, some, more than one conservative that I read on Twitter last night said, hey, politics aside, I know Ben Jacobs. If Ben Jacobs said this happened, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, he's a good reporter. We know each other. So there's no disputing what happened, but we still feel the need to describe, and obviously part of our job is telling what happened, but it's like we have to get people past this moment of disbelief that we're seeing in the world on Twitter, which is, here's another liberal reporter sort of instigating it. Some of it's even in the Fox News description to me, like, you know, put the recorder in his face. He didn't put it in his face. It's a tape recorder. You put it near the mouth of the subject. It's not
No, what do you mean? You take the tape recorder and you put it in a closet in another room.
Right.
That's how you
This
get
is
the audio.
almost certainly what he did.
Yeah,
and
right.
his persistence was saying, no, there won't be time for that because today is the last day of voting. There's no time to get your opinion later. The story's happening now. This is the biggest single domestic issue in this election. You said you'd react to it after this event happened.
Right.
This event happened. It's now. Right. It's right now. This is your reaction. I mean, Ben Jacobs did nothing wrong and 100% right.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that, you know, Gianforte is saying, I'm tired of this.
Tired of what?
Started.
Yeah, you haven't started. Thank you. Great point.
If you are elected,
Yes.
this is going to be this times 10. So you are, you know, you're showing that you're not ready for this position, right?
You're
if
not
this
ready.
is your reaction before day one, you can't do this.
You're not ready, and you don't actually value constitutional rights. You don't value freedom of press. You don't respect reporters. In fact, there was an incident prior to this where someone in an audience during an event had said, the media is our number one enemy. What should we do about it? That guy was apparently sitting next to a reporter, and I want to keep calling him Giancarlo. Gianforte pointed to the reporter and said something to the effect of, well, there's one of them, trying to make a joke or trying to pass it off as a joke. But now you look back at that situation and you realize, oh no, that wasn't really a joke. He really thinks of journalists as the enemy. And guess what? You have to answer questions. You're running for office, you have to answer questions. Running and hiding from reporters and then assaulting them if you don't like the type of questioning that they're giving you is just unacceptable. I mean, where are all the free speech people? Where are all the people who are like, I'm a constitutionalist, I care about the Constitution? No, you don't. You care about the Constitution whenever it's convenient for you. But if anyone uses their constitutional rights, in this case, to do their job, and you don't like the way they're doing their job, then apparently it's okay to assault them.
I will say that in defense of a number of conservatives, there were plenty. Not Paul Ryan, I thought was weak today, saying the guy should apologize, but he was super tepid about it. But at least on Twitter, some of the conservatives who I follow or who get retweeted by people I follow were like, hey man, you got to go to jail. The reporter did nothing wrong.
Well, he's unlikely to go to jail. He has been cited for misdemeanor assault. And so the local sheriff said, this doesn't really fall under the category of felony assault, right? But then we find out that the sheriff has some ties to Gianforte. So the sheriff, Brian Goodkin, noted in response to questions that he had made a $250 contribution to Gianforte's campaign. This contribution has nothing to do with our investigation, which is now complete, he said. Okay, I'm sure it has nothing to do with your investigation whatsoever. By the way, two major newspapers,
three now.
Oh, three now, have dropped their endorsement of Gianforte. The two that earlier had done so were the Missoulian and the Billings Gazette. They issued scathing denunciations of Gianforte.
Yeah, third paper did today.
Unfortunately, most votes have already been cast, right? So he still very well may be elected, and I think it would be great if more Republicans would come forward and denounce this behavior, because as many as on Twitter have said something, not enough have come forward and said, I mean, I don't know how this has become a partisan issue. Right, if you body slam a reporter, that's just universally wrong.
And punch him.
Yeah. Right, if we compare this to the United incident, right, where there was so much outrage about an assault, but somehow now it's a liberal reporter and there are questions.
And by the way, I mean, Gianforte didn't even know who that reporter was, right? And so how would he know what Jacob's political leanings are? How would he know what his ideology is? Well, he just didn't want to answer any questions because I guess that question was too difficult for him to answer.
Yeah, I don't know whether liberal or not. I mean, they writes for the Guardian, but Gianforte knows that somebody pestering you about the score, the CEO score of the new healthcare bill is eager to point out that the healthcare bill is a disaster and that it will affect Montanans in a very specific way.
Right.
And he didn't want to answer those questions because he has sidestepped it for as long as he possibly could. Nothing beats your line about I'm sick and tired of this. It's like a draft pick at the NFL draft. He's like, I'm tired of this tackling, man. Yeah. I'm out. I can't take any more of this. It's really great. I was listening to the radio today, listening to POTUS radio on Sirius, which I listen to a lot, and it's good. It brings in, especially the journalism show, the media room. I can't remember what the hell it's called.
Not as good as Progress, though.
Julie, no, that's right. But if during the day, before we come on, you want to listen to a Julie Mason show, but it's a great idea what the establishment is saying. I don't say that with much in a disparaging way, but it is. Because here's what everyone there expects, that Gianforte is still going to win. And the fact that 75% of the votes were cast before this. Democrats will need a significant turn. The theory, and nobody really knows in Montana, really hard to track because you don't vote by party ID in the primary, so you can just come in, you just vote.
Yeah.
But they think that Gianforte, the way to beat him will be with a significant turnout on election day, which I guess is today, for Rob Quist.
Well, also keep in mind, though, if you're inclined to vote for someone like Gianforte, his opponent, Rob Quist, he's like the polar opposite, right? He's like a huge Bernie supporter, folk music performer type guy. I mean, like, he has NPR written all over him.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't even think Gianforte plays the banjo, which is, I think, could really really swing this thing.
Okay, but anyway, I'm not saying anything negative about Quist. I'm just saying, in a race where he's against Gianforte, they couldn't be more different. So I feel like if someone is inclined to vote for Gianforte, I don't think this incident would somehow convince them. Oh, maybe Quist is a better option.
If you're a member of the Young Turks, you not only get the whole 2-hour Young Turks show on demand anytime you want, ad-free, but you also get so many other shows. Old school, you'll love it. Aggressive progressive for guys who are true progressives. Now also Nerd Alert for gaming and tech. What the Flick for movie reviews. You will love it. Check it out right now at tytnetwork.com/join.
Save up to 30% on top brand gear in every department during Guitar Center's Memorial Day Savings Event. You have 5 days to save with special financing on select major brands. And grab your copy of the list in-store, featuring gear with prices too low to advertise. Plus, download your coupon to get 15% off a single item $1.99 or more. Save big this Memorial Day weekend at Guitar Center. In-store and online.
Montana congressional candidate Greg Gianforte has been charged with misdemeanor assault after he body slammed a reporter from The Guardian. Now, while some conservatives have come out and denounced that type of violent behavior, there have been some who have made excuses for him. Case in point, Representative Duncan Hunter, he's a Republican from California, and he said the following: "It's not appropriate behavior unless the reporter deserved it." Now, he admitted later, "I did not read the story, I just saw the headline." Well, perhaps you should avoid commenting until you know the facts of the story. But anyway,
he's a Republican.
Yeah, I know.
Read the story and read books.
Now we have some other examples of Republicans who, gave a very weak response in regard to this story. Let's go to Trent Franks.
The left has precipitated this tense, confrontational approach throughout the country in recent months.
It's interesting because in some regard, Republicans come off as strong, right? They come off as people who are more willing to fight for what they want in policy or, either domestically or foreign policy. But when it comes to people asking them questions, when it comes to reporters asking them questions, they lose it. Like they can't handle it.
If to that point, Anna, if there is one good thing to come out of a Trump win, it is this sort of reawakening or insurgence of attitude and drive in journalism, right? Mm-hmm. Sort of seeing such an obvious enemy has awakened, I think, journalism in general. Not all. So plenty of it was going along fine before, but some of it needed a kick in the pants. And so, to some extent, what Trent Franks is saying is true. Because in his world, the way things have been for 25 or 30 years is the right wing and Republicans have led policy after policy. Sometimes the Democrats have gone along, and rarely have they offered a robust alternative. And we're having a debate about policy in this country that is at best right of center, and to some extent is just further right of center. And the Republicans have been punching at working class with Democratic compliance too often. Have been punching at working class Americans and lower class Americans and poor Americans for decades and decades and decades. And now in these rallies and in these town halls where people have shown up, they're punching back. Mm-hmm. And that's not something they've experienced. So to Trent Franks, this is a fairly new experience to him, because their world has been to punch and punch and punch. And now finally, when somebody punches back, they say, "Why are you being so confrontational? Here's what happens. I grab your shirt, I punch you and I punch you and I punch you. I take money out of your pocket, which you can barely feed your kids with, and I give it to me and my rich friends, and I punch you again. And now you're knocking my hand away and fighting back. What is wrong with you? This is not what's going on." And I'm being over the top metaphorically, but it is clearly we are seeing a degree of outrage at Republicans, I think mostly, and also at Democrats, for a manner of governing that has gone on too long. That is unquestionably what Bernie Sanders tapped into, and it is to some extent what Donald Trump benefited for by falsely tapping into it.
I will say that Trent Franks is wrong in saying that the left precipitated this kind of aggression between the press and, representatives. Your president precipitated this aggression along the campaign trail. And it's not to say that there's a causal link between what happened with Gianforte and this reporter and Trump, but he definitely sets the tone from the top, and things like this can flourish in the era of Trump.
Right. I think, look, my takeaway from all of this is obviously do not ever resort to violence. Don't ever get physical. But don't let Republicans intimidate you. If you're in the media or if you're a liberal, don't let them, or if someone who just has a conscience or any ethics, don't let them intimidate you from fighting for what you know is right. Because this is their reaction to people who are questioning their authority, to people who are challenging some of their policy proposals and how disastrous it'll be for a huge chunk of the American population. Don't let them intimidate you. Trent Franks thinks we're precipitating this type of whatever it is. Go ahead and think whatever you want, right? But they have this amazing ability to act violently, to disrespect American citizens, journalists, the Constitution, and then turn around and point fingers at us as if we're doing it. No, we're not doing this. We're not the ones that are getting violent. We're not the ones who had a campaign that literally advocated for violence against protesters at rallies, okay? I mean, what is he even talking about? But Trent Franks, okay, go ahead.
I just mean, but to me, the violence, when it's physical violence, when it's protesters being physically violent, or the guards or the henchmen of Republican candidates creating the violence, I think what the violence that the have-nots are feeling is that we create this giant permanent underclass, and that we have created for 3 decades, better than 3 decades, policies which take money from regular Americans and enhance the wealth of the richest Americans. As that gap between rich and poor gets bigger and bigger and bigger, there is a degree of economic violence. That's what this outrage is. That's what Trent Franks is talking about. He's not talking about violence. Ben Jacobs wasn't violent in any way, but he is talking about a aggressive attitude at these town halls. He's talking about, hey, what happened to the point where you just wrote some emails or you made some phone calls? They are uncomfortable with this wave, and I do not want a revolution in this country the way we see revolutions elsewhere. I want a legitimate I want a sea change in politics. But if folks like Trent Franks, and to some extent Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein too, just to use them as representative of mainstream Democrat politicians, if they're not careful, as that gap gets wider and wider, you're going to lose any semblance of control over a particularly robust and angry set of have-nots who will no longer accept, as Ben Jacobs represented as a member of the press, will no longer accept you not commenting on the most important piece of domestic legislation facing the people in that state.
Right.
But for 30 years, they haven't had to respond, or they give a nonsense response that doesn't, and their feet are being held to the fire, and that's welcoming. But they better wake up, or the degree of disorder that we've had in this country will rival 1968 or exceed it.
Yeah, elected officials, for some reason, think that they don't have to abide or essentially do their jobs, because they have gotten away with it for a long time. So now, all of a sudden, since people are challenging them and asking them, hey, why don't you represent the people who elected you, and why don't you answer to these disastrous policies that you're signing on to, they can't handle it, right? They lose it. Well, guess what? Every other person in this country who has a job is expected to do their job properly. If you don't want to do your job properly, then get the hell out of office. Don't run again, okay? Don't rely on us paying your salary so you can continue to not represent us and actually work against us. And I love the aggression against these elected officials. And again, for the 50 billionth time, never physical, always, aggressively vocalizing what it is that you're dissatisfied with. I think that's important. They don't like having their feet held to the fire. If they can't handle it, they shouldn't be in office. Finally, let's go to Paul Ryan and his statement on the whole debacle.
Altercations. There is no time where a physical altercation should occur with the press or with just between human beings. So that is wrong, and it should not have happened. Should the gentleman apologize? Yeah, I think he should apologize.
Okay, so that statement by itself isn't so bad, but he followed it with this.
If he wins, he has been chosen by the people of Montana, who their Congress is going to be. I'm going to let the people of Montana decide who they want as their representative.
So he was asked, if Gianforte wins, will he seat him? And that he essentially said, yeah, we will, because if he gets elected, that's who the people have chosen.
Man, I hope Rob Quist wins. If nothing else, then to increase the number of sitting congressmen who can play bluegrass music.
Right.
Which I'm guessing is pretty low.
Yeah. Does he play the banjo or something?
He plays the banjo.
Oh, it's the banjo.
Yeah.
What did we think it was?
I don't remember. I don't remember what I thought he played, but I didn't know.
First of all, he may play many instruments. He
right.
needs to be musically talented. I'm not trying to make fun of Rob Quist, but playing the banjo is fun. It is.
Podcast the Young Turks anytime you want. tytnetwork.com/join.
I think it's weird.
No, it's not weird. In fact, you'll think,
I'm like a smart person.
Do it now. tytnetwork.com/join.
Earlier today, Prime Minister Theresa May stated that maybe it's not such a great idea to share intelligence with U.S. officials, considering the fact that there are members of Trump's administration who continuously leak information about investigations to U.S. press.
Members of the administration, yes, members, including the main member of the administration.
Right, exactly, who apparently loves leaking information because he thinks he has the right to. Now, of course, there is an ongoing investigation in Britain right now regarding the recent terrorist attack during an Ariana Grande concert, and there are parts of that investigation that are sensitive and are classified. However, some of that information was leaked to the New York Times by American officials, and as a result, Theresa May said that maybe it's not such a great idea to share intel with Americans. Now, in a statement, Mrs. May's office said she would bring up the matter to a NATO gathering in Brussels on Thursday evening and would make clear to President Trump that intelligence that is shared between our law enforcement agencies must remain secure. May's statement followed expressions of outrage by top law enforcement officials after the New York Times published images on Wednesday of the shrapnel, backpack, and battery used by Salman Abedi, the 22-year-old bomber who killed 22 people and injured 64 outside the Manchester arena. Now, there is an update to this story. It is somewhat breaking. Apparently, Britain has decided to resume intelligence sharing with the United States after suspending the practice amid media leaks by American officials. Apparently, they're doing this because of fresh assurances that we are now working closely with our key partners around the world, including all those in the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. The US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand share intelligence in one of the world's tightest multilateral agreements, or arrangements, I should say. All right, so I guess they're going to share intel, but
there was no threat of him not sharing intel, but it was a sign that the Trump administration leaks like a sieve, and many times intentionally, because they can't get Donald Trump to do anything. So I don't know if that was the case here. But now Trump, of course, and Jeff Sessions want to investigate the leaks, as if when you don't have to go much farther than the Oval Office to investigate some of the biggest leaks. But yes, the special relationship between Great Britain and the United States continues, despite a story that we're not getting to because the day is filled with news, despite Trump giving his speech today, and despite assurances from White House officials really not in any way mentioning or supporting Article 5, the key component of NATO, further sort of apparently throughout Western Europe, to some extent shockwaves, but certainly some despair and concern that Trump is not fully committed to exercising the key component of NATO, which means coming to the defense partners.
Right, exactly, because he feels that they're not paying their fair share, right?
And this is a person who hasn't paid their taxes.
Or and has filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah, look, there are a lot of leaks coming from the White House right now, and it does put some relationships with our closest allies in jeopardy, and I just, everything's been a complete disaster. Like, whether it's policy proposals coming from the Trump administration, or, we didn't even get to the story about the COO within the education department just flat out quitting. He had a 5-year contract that began under the Obama administration. He's like, I can't work with Betsy DeVos. She's forcing me to testify that the federal government is giving out too much money in student loans.
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, student aid, not loan. Right. And he's like, no, I'm not going to testify. That's ridiculous.
Did you guys do Ben Carson yesterday?
And then there's the Ben Carson story, which we will get to today, where he says poverty is just, it's a state of mind. It's not really a thing. It's just, if you are a Trump supporter who's watching this show, first of all, I respect you for watching this show, because we bashed on him quite a bit.
Thanks, Drew, become a member.
Yeah, become a member. But secondly, what's wrong with you? Like, what more do you need? What more do you need? What more do you need? Okay, there are people in the White House right now who are leaking information to reporters because Trump is a disaster, right? They can't work with him. No one seems to really like him. His approval rating is incredibly low. He's causing all this trouble with NATO allies. He's causing all this trouble with, pretty much any country with his loose talk and his misunderstanding or lack of understanding of any type of political issue. Like, he's so incredibly uneducated on the issues, and it's translating into a disaster.
Yeah. He, in effect, undermines everything that he sets forth as an agenda, and just particularly about counterterrorism, which was one of his major platforms. Like, that relies on sharing information, right? Like, in a way that can be trusted. And if you can't do that, then it completely undermines our ability to fight terrorism internationally. So
it's devastating. But look, at least Britain has decided to continue sharing intel. It is important that we work together, and we'll see how this goes in the future. But again, these leaks have started from day one, and I just don't see them stopping. And by the way, anyone who's criticizing the New York Times for reporting on, the information that they received through the leaks, that's what journalists do.
Yeah, and they checked. They're not. There was no. If it jeopardizes an invest, they withhold stuff all the time.
They do. Yes.
If you're a member of the Young Turks, you not only get the whole 2-hour Young Turks show on demand anytime you want, ad free, but you also get so many other shows. Old school, you'll love it. Aggressive progressive for guys who are true progressives. Now also Nerd Alert for gaming and tech. What the Flick for movie reviews. You will love it. Check it out right now at tytnetwork.com/join.
Christian school in Maryland has decided to prevent a 4.0 grade average student from walking during her own graduation because she chose life as opposed to aborting a pregnancy that she has been blessed with. She considers it a blessing. She has decided to move forward with the pregnancy, and as a result, she has been punished. She says, it's because I'm pregnant, and you can see the results of my mistake. Maddie Runkles is the name of the student, and again, she's a 4.0 GPA student. She is, she's an overall
the president of her student council before she was removed.
She's ambitious. She's an overachiever.
But she's promiscuous. Don't let her graduate. Send her to pre-K again. Billy Madison her.
So I want to be clear about something. They're going to allow her to graduate. They just won't allow her to walk during her graduation. Runkles also says that parents in the area are tagging her on Facebook and writing abusive comments about her because she's pregnant. Principal David R. Hobbs sent out a letter to parents of students at the tiny Christian school saying Runkles is being prevented from walking at graduation, not because she's pregnant, but because she was immoral. The best way to love her right now is to hold her accountable for her morality that began this situation. So, okay, just for a second, keep in mind that people like the individuals who run this school will demonize a woman for aborting a pregnancy, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, how dare you? You're killing a life. Obviously, you guys know I disagree with that, idea, but okay, if you want to encourage women or young girls to carry out the pregnancy, punishing them for doing so is probably not the right way to go about it. Now, Runkles doesn't regret her decision, but she says after this whole, debacle, she kind of thought about whether or not her decision was smart, and she's like, maybe I, the costs outweigh the benefits. Maybe I shouldn't have done this.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like it wasn't worth it, she said.
Yeah. The president of March for Life, though, did call this punishment a bad decision and the antithesis of what it means to be Christian. So there are people on the right, there are conservatives who disagree with the school's decision to prevent her from walking.
It's not compassionate at all, and she was also suspended for 2 days following the announcement of her pregnancy. She was removed from being the president of her student council, and then this punishment will come, as I understand, about 4 months later. Like, her not walking at graduation will come 4 months after. So her dad, who was also Scott Runkles, served on the school board, had to recuse himself because he was so frustrated being a part of the school board making this decision. He basically has just said that this punishment doesn't suit what she did. This is a pledge that the students at the school sign when they are in 5th grade, that they aren't, when you're in 5th grade, if you ask me, like, are you never going to do any illegal drugs and all this stuff, and they quote, I believe it's
like the DARE program we had, which is like dare to keep kids off drugs. At the end, you probably sign something saying sure.
But this is about image. She's going to be showing by the time of her graduation. I think she's going to be about 5 months along, and they don't want a pregnant teenager to be walking at graduation. If this was about a punishment, then you punish someone for which she agrees with these rules, by the way. She is a major player at the school. Her family is majorly involved. She admits that she did something wrong. It's that the punishment doesn't. Well, right, but she's saying that, like, because she signed this thing, she's like, I agree, I did something wrong, but this punishment doesn't serve to show that I did something as quote unquote immoral, because this takes place months after the actual announcement. She was suspended for 2 days. She's taken off of student council. That's punishment enough. You want to punish the girl?
You want to punish her? Make her have a kid. She walks around every day with the legacy of this. She will walk around with the legacy of this for the rest of her life, whether she keeps the kid or not. If it's showing her there are consequences to her action, you don't have to do that when the person is pregnant.
Yeah.
And you already did that. Plus, they don't want the image of a pregnant teenager at graduation really quick. I know they haven't said that, but that is clearly they don't want her. Yeah. She's in a gown. I could carry 6 beach balls under that thing. No one would notice.
And also,
it's a very flowy garment.
As another little thing to add to this, we covered the story on Pop Trigger yesterday, and someone in the comments said that she goes to Heritage Academy, and that the people were saying, what's happening to the father of the child? Is he also being punished? And she said that Maddie is not with the father, and the father doesn't go to the school. Because a lot of people were saying, all right, well then I hope that the father is also not allowed to walk at graduation, which is a fair point. But it doesn't seem like he also signed the same pledge agreement and went to the same
What they should do is take every kid up to a lie detector and ask every kid, have you had premarital sex? Because she's the only one that has visible proof that she did it. But I'm sure there are others. So if they really care about this, if this is the kind of witch hunt they want to go through, they need to go do it. Because, I mean, I went to a Catholic school, and I had a lot of people who worked there, and everything were great, but, you know, you were around Catholicism for a while, and you do a little research into the skeletons in that closet, and there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes of the Catholic Church that we discover time and time again, like, are pretty sketchy.
Right.
But you get rewarded because you keep it under wraps. You don't let people know about it, and it goes on for dozens and dozens of years. If you have this kind of logic, apply it and say that, like, well, you shouldn't have a religion then. This is something where this woman is going to have to walk around with the legacy of this for the rest of her
and
life.
at some point in time, the baby's going to find out about this too.
Of course. Look, my biggest issue with all of this, and not all Christians do this, so let me just get that caveat out of the way before I continue on with my statement. But my issue with stories like this is that some Christians who are, you know, on the more extreme side of the spectrum tend to think that a person's value is all about what he or she, mostly she, does in her personal life. What kind of sexual behavior is she involved in? Is she having premarital sex? Here's the thing, okay? People are now getting married in their 30s. And the idea that you are supposed to abstain from sex until you get married is ridiculous. Even if people are getting married at 21, it's still ridiculous. You should have sex with that person before you get married. It's very important, okay? And if you decide not to, that's on you. But that shouldn't be forced on you by some random creepy principal who, like, thinks that your entire existence should be minimized to what you do sexually. It's so incredibly enraging. She's a smart student, okay? She has followed your religious guidelines by not aborting, you know, this pregnancy. And so instead of celebrating her, you're punishing her, and you're sending a very strong message to other girls in that school. Right?
You're right. I think that's the whole point, Anna, isn't it? I mean, that is a message that they are sending to other girls in that school.
Yeah.
Don't even think about it, because look at this storm that we've created around Maddie.
Don't think about what? Having sex? Yeah, because let me tell you something. They will have sex. I know. I would say 90% of those girls and boys are having sex, okay? I hate to break it to you.
In high school.
But I think it is absolutely intentional, and I think that the school has sort of doubled down on it. I went to the school's website just before we, started covering this story, and there isn't, I don't know what it was beforehand, but right now, all it is just this letter from the principal. It's just that. There's no looking at our extracurriculars. There's no, our board or about or contact. It's just this letter. They're sending a message that they're doubling down here.
Yeah.
This is absolutely their school values, and they don't see anything wrong with it. And especially because it is based in sort of religious purity, they will never change their views on that, because you can always find anything that you want in the Bible. This is coming from a Christian, guys. You can find anything to back up whatever point of view you want. There's a basis for murdering people in there.
Yeah. I always forget that you're Christian.
Lean not on your own understanding.
Yeah.
Trust the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your understanding.
See, look, just to go back to my caveat, you fall under that caveat,
Except for the weird Bible tattoos. Jeezy, crazy.
I also have break bread right here now. It's bad.
Why are you have a mountain?
Yeah, I know.
So you're Muslim, the mountain comes to you. It's weird. She's all over the place.
I can't be tamed.
I just think, time and time again, this abstinence-only approach just is proven to not work. You can do it. You can punish this girl who had sex and got pregnant all you want. It's just not going to work. And the joke that I learned about Christianity growing up was whatever you do, just confess and it's over. Say 6 Hail Marys and walk, and now you're valedictorian. That's what I like that in this same presentation you've shown someone on the other side being don't we forgive? Isn't that what we do?
Yep.
Let's move forward.
Corporate media is awesome.
Wrong.
Independent media is the way to go.
Believe me.
Support independent media right now. Become a Young Turks member. tytnetwork.com/join.
To find your ideal room on Trivago, you can select from hundreds of options. Whatever you want. Trivago finds your ideal room, and then compares over 200 websites to get you the best price. Hotel? Trivago.
Betsy DeVos, our education secretary, was recently testifying in front of Congress in regard to a number of things, and a congresswoman by the name of Catherine Clark from Massachusetts wanted to ask her specifically about federal money We're talking about taxpayer money going toward private schools who openly and transparently discriminate against LGBT students. Now, interestingly enough, DeVos didn't really want to answer the question and then made it pretty clear that maybe it's not such a bad idea to give federal money to these schools. Take it away. Let's take a look.
You are the backstop for students in their right to access a quality education. Would you, in this case, say, we are going to overrule and you cannot discriminate, whether it be on sexual orientation, race, special needs, in our voucher programs? Will that be a guarantee from you for our students?
For states who have programs that allow for parents to make choices, they set up the rules around that.
So that's a no. Do you see any circumstance where the Federal Department of Education under your leadership would say that a school was not qualified? What if they said, we are not accepting African American students, but that was okay with the state? Does the state trump? Do you see any situation where you would step in?
Well, again, I think the Office of Civil Rights and our Title IX protections are broadly applicable across the board. But when it comes to parents making choices on behalf of their students...
This isn't about parents making choices. This is about use of federal dollars.
I love that line of questioning, and I love how obvious Betsy DeVos is in regard to not pulling funding away from these private schools. First of all, let's just for 1 second separate, the LGBT component of this story and focus on this idea that we would be funneling taxpayer money to private schools. Much like how we do with private prisons. If you want to run a private business, whether it's a school or a prison, guess what? You should run it privately without taxpayer money being funneled into it, right? And what Betsy DeVos wants to do is take funding away from our public schools, which are already severely underfunded, and put it right into these private schools that in many cases are focused on religious teachings, do not like to teach about things regarding science, things like evolution or climate change. Betsy DeVos loves all of that. That's the kind of stuff that she was pushing for in Michigan, and to some extent she succeeded in it. So even if we're not talking about discrimination and some of the more terrible behavior you see in some of these religious private schools, it's still absolutely ridiculous for public money to go to private institutions. It's ridiculous, okay? So already I'm fired up about this story because it drives me nuts, especially when you consider the fact that all these public schools are underperforming because they don't have the resources necessary to teach their kids properly, okay? So that's point number one. I'm going to let you guys take it away while I cool off a little bit.
Yeah, goodness. So here's the thing is, their argument would probably be something like, well, if it's a voucher, it's my tax money, and I don't want to give my tax money in. I want to instead put it in a private school.
Okay.
So that's one version of it, and that doesn't apply to every aspect in which money would be given to a private school, but that's one thing that they would cite.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let me please respond to that in a second. Okay. I love this, interest that some parents have in sending their kids to private schools. And guess what? You think that those vouchers are going to exist once Republicans have their way and they privatize grade school education? They don't even want to give you health care. Okay, they don't even want to provide for you if you're underprivileged, if you're pregnant and you need maternal care. They don't even want to provide that. You think they're going to give you vouchers if we privatize education all around in this country? They're not going to give you vouchers. It's just, look, I get it. I get that people are scared because a lot of these public schools are underperforming right now. But understand why they're underperforming. It's because they are taking your taxpayer money and they're funneling it into these private schools that, by the way, do not have to abide by certain educational standards that I think are incredibly important. Like scientific standards, for instance. But nonetheless,
right, any kind of performance-oriented standards. That's what folks are frustrated with, and that's what this line of questioning is in large part about. It's great work if you can get it, DeVos, which is like set up a bunch of schools that you allow money to go to, so the people who you know, who you're connected with, because that's essentially what you advocated the most in Michigan, so that they can get wealthy and those schools can thrive while other schools wither on the vine. And it's great work if you can also make sure there's no transparency holding those schools accountable for what they do with that kind of money. And that's exactly what it is. And so this line of questioning is to say, let's say, not even academically, but how can you? Would you ever say that we are going to give money to schools that refuse to teach what we think would be like universal American values, things like, equal rights, and rather give it to a school that's just going to tell you that gay people are wrong?
Yeah, and that's where I'll jump in, because I think that, Anna, you know a lot about how funds and vouchers are being repurposed and taken away from public education, and that's something that you can speak to. What I can speak to is being discriminated against as a queer person, as a member of the LGBT community, and this is why this story just really frustrated me, and honestly, it made me feel so disheartened for the LGBT youth coming up in this administration, because I know how it feels when you feel like no one is on your side, and just to know that you're going to be discriminated against because of kids at your school. You don't want the government on top of that to discriminate, or have the ability to discriminate against you, for your own school to discriminate against you. What I particularly don't like about Betsy DeVos is that she is kind of playing coy about whether or not she is pro-LGBT people. I know there was an article in the New York Times that they talk about in this Huffington Post article, saying that she has gay friends and that she supports them. But I know people who would consider me a friend who still wouldn't stick up for my rights, and that silence is saying that you side with our oppressors. And also, she's being coy, but her money talks, and we know exactly where she puts her money. We have a record of that. $6.1 million to focus on the family. It's not good enough. It's unacceptable. So I think that there is absolutely a larger discussion here about where the funds for public education are going, where they should be going, how we can focus on getting public education in the United States to where it needs to be. But for me, this is always going to come down to standing up for my community, and she's not doing that. That's not okay. I'm so frustrated with her.
Yeah, I mean, I'm beyond frustrated with her, especially considering how much I care about, preserving and improving education in the country. I mean, this has nothing to do with me personally. I'm done with my education. I don't have to worry about paying for it, but I care about opportunities for younger generations. I care about leading a country toward innovation and making sure that we're all, educated, we're all thriving, and that's not something that this administration cares for. It's not their priority. What Betsy DeVos cares about is privatizing schools, okay? And that is not school choice. That is leading to less choices for people, especially if they're from a lower socioeconomic status. And so taking taxpayer money and funneling into these religious schools, even if they're discriminating against certain students, is absolutely ridiculous.
Our reporter Jordan Charrington broke the Donna Brazil story. He was right. She just apologized for it. Help us get more reporters like that. You're the one responsible for that. Thank you. And let's do more right now at tytnetwork.com/go.
Stafford High School in Falmouth, Virginia did something awesome. Now, they have a student there by the name of Andrew Schalk, and he has type 1 diabetes, and as a result, he needs to have a service dog with him at all times. His service dog, who goes by the name Alpha, actually alerts him when his blood sugar level is either too low or too high. So the dog essentially keeps this student alive by letting him know, hey, yo, you got to do something. Your blood sugar is too low or too high. And so he had asked the school if it would be okay if they included his dog in the yearbook, and the school obliged.
Awesome.
And so take a look at what the yearbook looks like.
Good face.
Oh my god, I love this story so much.
Oh my goodness.
I love everything about this. I love the framing of the dog's picture. I mean, somebody in the production meeting today, I like that he's kind of peering up.
Yeah, for those of you at home who are driving and can't see it, essentially next to his photo in the yearbook is a photo of his dog, Alpha, and he's just the bottom third of the photo, looking so adorable, ears back, and just meek and happy and helpful.
Oh, he has a
black lab
too. He has an ID card. Did you
He
guys
does.
see that?
Let's take a look at the ID card. All right, this is graphic 19. Oh.
For those of you listening on Sirius XM, it's an ID card.
It's an ID card, and the dog is wearing one of those.
Pashmina.
He's wearing a bandana. So cute. So cute.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
Oh God.
So let's hear from AJ and what he thinks about his dog. Let's go to graphic 20. He says, yes, Alpha is really an amazing animal. He makes a disability, such as my diabetes, such a positive experience for me and my life overall, and really turns it into a blessing rather than a negative part of my life.
The dog smells his blood sugar at night and goes, hey, and he's like, what is it, boy? And the dog's like, arr, arr. And he's like, is it my blood sugar again? He's like, yeah, that's the only thing I notify you of. And then he gets himself some insulin.
Dogs are, at the moment,
you don't have a dog, do you?
My dog is the most important part of my life.
You're married.
I am married.
You have a mother and father who love you.
I do. But, like, my dog provides stress relief and happiness that's unimaginable. Like, I can't even begin to explain how happy my dog makes me. And I don't know. I know that
Grace is melted.
people are probably thinking I'm crazy right now.
No, Anna, you're not crazy. Don't let them tell you that. Casper, my dog, is my best friend, and we hang out all the time. Hi, Casper.
You love him.
He's the cutest.
You love him so much. He gives you a speech impediment.
Yeah. Whenever I talk about him, I just turn to a different person. I love him so much, and I love you too, Alpha.
You know what it is?
Look at this cutie puppy.
What has happened?
They're always excited to see you. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know that this might make me seem like a weak person because I need a living thing to be excited to see me every day.
Right.
Always excited to see me. He follows me around everywhere. Okay. If I get up in the morning and I'm ready to like read the news and put the rundown together, he'll come and he'll sit next to me and just watch me to like read the news. If I have to go to the bathroom, he'll follow
Just going like, when do we eat? We have this cat that we took in from it was abandoned by the lady across the street, and I've come around on this thing. I wake up and sneeze all morning, but I get it. I get cats now.
Yeah? Okay.
I feel like an old racist who like met a black person. Like, they're not that bad.
Oh, this is a great story to end on.
It really is. It is. And I love that the school accommodated in this way, and it got a lot of positive attention. Considering all the negative school stories that we started the show with, this is a good one, and I wanted to end with that.
Our journalism drive is almost over. It ends in Trump's first 100 days. We need to hire more reporters and more watchdogs. Let's do that right now at tytnetwork.com/go.
Inspiration is wings to the mind. Fly with your mind.
Ben Carson is the head of HUD, the housing component of our federal government, which is a little worrying, especially when you consider his thoughts on the disadvantaged, those who come from a lower socioeconomic status. What does Ben Carson think of people living in poverty? Well, hear his answer during a recent town hall that aired on Sirius XM just last night.
I think poverty to a large extent is also a state of mind. You has the right mindset. You can take everything from them and put them on the street. And I guarantee you, in a little while, they'll be right back up there. And you take somebody with the wrong mindset, you can give them everything in the world. They'll work their way back down to the bottom.
So all those people who literally work full-time jobs at Walmart, 40 hours a week, but yet can't put food on the table for their families, it's because of that mindset that they have, you know? If they just think a little differently, all of a sudden, you know, their higher-ups at Walmart might pay them this huge salary, and then they they'll just be living in wealth. That's the way it works. It's their mindset. It's their mindset. It's not a system that's been set up to work against them over and over again. It's just their mindset. Let's go ahead and blame the victims instead of actually focusing on all the people who have rigged this system against the average American.
Also, I read an article that pointed out what Ben Carson is sort of alluding to is, in fact, the plot to Trading Places a little bit. And Dan Aykroyd, you will recall, his character in that movie did not rise up to the top. I think that he became sort of suicidal by the end.
He did become suicidal and dress up like a Santa while drunk, and he ate salmon that had been in his beard.
Didn't work.
That said, they do ruin Randolph and Mortimer, who are the dukes who set the original bet, and wouldn't you know it, later, and a cameo in the movie Coming to America, Randolph and Mortimer are still living in the street, and it isn't until the Prince of Zamunda gives them a bunch of money out of nowhere that they say that they're back. And what was that? Literally a government handout, albeit from the Kingdom of Zamunda. Thank you. Case closed.
You're welcome.
We've got a bunch of claps. Thank you so much. It's true. But yeah, this is what he does. He's grossly He's doing a lot wrong. One thing in particular he's doing wrong is grossly mischaracterizing the lifestyle afforded to you by social safety net programs. He makes it sound like there are people who sit there. It makes it sound like everyone who is on a social safety net program sits there and says, that's all I need in the world. I don't want any better than this, and I don't need to work. Even though you do need to work to receive a lot of these benefits. And there's a lot in your way. And it's sure, if there's someone who is sitting there and thinks that's all they need, that person might exist. That's not the issue.
He's not symbolic of the general population, and unfortunately, that's the mischaracterization that we see in regard to the disadvantaged in this country over and over again. This idea that people use their food stamps to go to Whole Foods and buy lobster dinners. That doesn't happen. And that's a way of demonizing the most disadvantaged people in the country, just so the wealthiest people in the country can continue hoarding the wealth for themselves, so they can continue taking advantage of a system that allows them to pay less in taxes, percentage-wise, than every single person sitting on this stage right now. That's the system that we're dealing with right now. The audacity of this guy to say that poverty is a mindset. Poverty is something that happens because you don't think about, doing better for yourself. No, that's not what happens. There are so many cases. I mean, think about CEO pay in this country, and think about the recent arms deal with Saudi Arabia, right? The Trump administration sold the arms deal to Saudi Arabia as a way of creating more jobs in the United States. And so, of course, Boeing and Raytheon and all of these huge weapons manufacturers are involved in this deal. And guess what? Even though their revenue goes up every year, they have been cutting hundreds of jobs, if not thousands of jobs in some cases, right? Why do they do that? Why are they cutting jobs if they're making more money than ever before? They don't care about the average American. They don't care about their livelihood. They don't care about making sure that they take care of their own, okay?
Yeah, and if the Trump administration did care, then they wouldn't have appointed Ben Carson to this position, because I understand what he's trying to say. I get that, but what he's doing is he's buying into a stereotype about the service that he's supposed to be providing, the one that he's supposed to have the most fundamental understanding of, which he shows he absolutely does not have. He actually lacks it. I found a lot of people responded on Twitter about this, and I found Robert Reich was the Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton, and he said, quote, "So 15 million American children in poverty just need better attitudes, and they'll have food in their stomachs and roofs over their head." And I think that really just plays in. You can't. I know what Ben Carson is trying to say, but that's not the reality. What Ben Carson needs to do is reshape those unfortunate stereotypes that a lot of Americans believe, and he's not doing that. He's further buying into them and stigmatizing the poor, when we should be talking about it's not children that just need to get a better mindset.
If he wants to ascribe it to an attitude, at least come up with some systems that make it possible for the people who you think have bad attitudes to get the attitude that you think is the problem, is the solution.
Yeah, he's not the Secretary of Attitude Adjustment.
I just think that he's the smartest idiot in the world. Because he's a renowned brain surgeon, head of surgery at Johns Hopkins or whatever. And when people say, like, this isn't brain surgery, it's not. But I would really like him to go back to brain surgery.
Yeah,
When it comes
just
to Ben
because
Carson,
you're smart with, neuroscience or being a brain surgeon doesn't necessarily mean that you should be the head of housing and urban development.
It's sad. I mean, Ben Carson, that's what it feels like. It feels like it's a limited mindset of Trump, who is a branding person. He's like, what black people do I know? And I know that sounds shitty, but I have no proof that Trump is more sophisticated than that to make that decision. And what experience does the surgeon from Johns Hopkins have in this area? And I think that he has experience saying stuff like this and making the right friends from it. Right. Because he says that, he seems appealing. It's exactly what they want someone to say. And folks to believe him. I can't believe that he said it.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make one quick point. For all of those rural white Americans who voted for Trump because they felt like they were left behind, they felt like the economic situation that we're currently dealing with isn't working out for them, how do you like these apples, right? How do you like what someone like Ben Carson thinks about you if you lost your job in a factory or you're no longer able to secure a job, mining for coal? How do you like hearing this from Ben Carson, who thinks, hey, you lost your job or you got laid off or you're living in poverty because it's your mindset?
Yeah, and Anna, to that degree, what this comes down to for me is a lack of empathy on his part, because he is not able to empathize with other people and see their situations. What he cited also in this Sirius XM interview is he
not all channels on Sirius are like this.
Right. He talks about his mother and how his mother worked 3 jobs and his experience, and basically saying, he said, if everyone had my mother, who I'm sure is a wonderful woman, then they wouldn't be in poverty. But it's not that simple, and that's what's so frustrating. It worked out for you, Ben Carson. You are a renowned brain surgeon. That's awesome. But that's not the experience of all Americans. Again, we're talking about 15 million children. And also, this comes after the Trump 2018 budget calls for, I think it's around 13% in cuts to housing and urban development. So, dude, you got to step up and go to bat for the people that you are put up to serve. And you're not doing that. It's just not as simple as how he reduces it down in this serious interview.
Young Turks membership creates independent media. Believe me. No ads. Believe me. All the shows. Believe me. On demand. Believe me. Support independent media. Believe me. It's awesome. Tremendous. You'll love it. Believe me. And by the end, you'll be thinking, I'm like a smart person. TYTnetwork.com/join.